The day I got the keys to my first home at 28 was the proudest moment of my life. After years of saving every penny while working as a software developer, I finally had a place to call my own. No more controlling parents dictating every aspect of my existence. No more feeling like a prisoner in my childhood bedroom. That sense of freedom lasted exactly 3 weeks before I received a strange call from my mortgage company. Someone had submitted paperwork to cancel my loan. My stomach dropped when I discovered who was behind it. Before I tell you how I discovered my parents' betrayal and what I did about it, drop a comment, sharing if you've ever had family try to control your major life decisions. And if you're watching, hit that subscribe button to support my channel. I grew up in a small Connecticut town where everyone knew everyone. As the only child of Thomas and Janet Wilson, I never lacked for material things, but freedom was a different story. My father built his reputation as one of the most ruthless corporate lawyers in the state. His argumentative skills that intimidated judges and opposing counsel were regularly deployed at our dinner table. My mother had been a corporate executive before deciding to channel all her micromanaging tendencies into raising me. From kindergarten through high school, every minute of my day was scheduled, monitored, and evaluated. My parents installed tracking apps on my phone before that was even common. Friends had to be pre-approved with preference, given to children of their country club associates. Any grade below an A triggered a family meeting where my father would calculate exactly how this would impact my chances of getting into an Ivy League university. Extracurricular activities were selected not for enjoyment, but for how they would appear on college applications. Piano lessons, debate, club tennis, and volunteer work at the hospital my mother sat on the board for. I excelled at computer science, finding refuge in coding where I could create worlds my parents could not control. The career path was predetermined. I would study business or law, potentially both, then return to Connecticut, where my father had connections at several prestigious firms. The possibility that I might want something different never entered their minds. Any time I suggested alternative plans, my father would launch into his prepared speech about family legacy and the opportunities they had created for me. My salvation came in the form of a full scholarship to UCLA. I deliberately applied to schools across the country, knowing physical distance would be my only chance at independence. When the acceptance letter arrived, my parents immediately started making plans to find my father consulting work in California so they could relocate. It took weeks of arguments, culminating in me threatening to reject the scholarship and join the military instead before they reluctantly agreed to let me go alone. Still, they insisted on co-signing my apartment lease, maintaining access to my bank accounts, and requiring daily phone calls. Throughout college, the manipulation continued. Any sign of independence was met with threats to cut financial support. When I joined a game development club instead of the pre-law society, my mother flew out unannounced for a weekend intervention. Dating choices were scrutinized with subtle background checks run on anyone I mentioned more than once. After graduation, I secured a position at a tech company in San Francisco. The salary was substantial enough that I could finally achieve complete financial independence. I opened new accounts they had no access to. I found an apartment with a roommate they had never met. For the first time, my life felt truly my own. That is when I met Amanda. We connected during a company hackathon, her creative design skills complementing my technical abilities. She grew up in a supportive household that encouraged her independence, a concept so foreign to me that it seemed almost fictional. Through her, I began to understand how families could support without controlling. Amanda helped me build a social circle that became my chosen family. Game nights, weekend hiking trips, spontaneous road journeys up the coast, all the normal young adult experiences I had been denied. Every free decision strengthened my resolve to maintain this independence. For 3 years, I lived frugally, putting aside as much as possible toward a down payment. The Bay Area housing market was brutal, but I was determined. My parents constantly reminded me that they had a fully furnished guest house waiting in Connecticut. Each suggestion came with thinly veiled criticisms about wasting money on rent when I could live rent-free with them. When I finally found a modest 2-bedroom home in Oakland within my budget, the feeling was indescribable. During the purchasing process, my parents bombarded me with reasons why this was a terrible idea. The neighborhood was unsafe. The commute would be exhausting. Property taxes in California were ridiculous. The foundation was probably cracked. Each call ended with the same suggestion that I move back east. The day my mortgage was approved, I felt like I had summited Everest. Amanda organized a housewarming party with all our friends. As I looked around at the people who supported my choices, I felt a sense of belonging I had never experienced in my parents' house. This modest home represented not just real estate, but the life I had built for myself. 3 weeks later, I received a strange call from the bank about paperwork irregularities. The representative mentioned there appeared to be co-signers on my loan that I had not listed in my application. My blood ran cold. Somehow my parents had managed to add their names to my mortgage without my knowledge or consent. When confronted, they claimed they were just trying to help. Their credit scores would get me a better interest rate. They wanted to provide a safety net if tech industry layoffs affected me. They were looking out for my best interests, as they always had. I immediately contacted my mortgage broker to have them removed. After several tense conversations, my parents appeared to accept my decision. My father even sent an email congratulating me on my independence, saying they respected my choice. Their apparent support felt strange but welcome. I should have known it was too good to be true. The first sign that something was still wrong came when my credit card company called about suspicious activity. Someone had attempted to change my mailing address back to my parents' home in Connecticut. When questioned, my mother admitted she had tried to consolidate my financial statements to help me stay organized. Then I noticed mail delivery becoming irregular. Important documents never arrived, including property tax information and homeowners association communications. Weeks later, my mother mentioned details from these missing documents during a phone call, claiming I must have told her about them and forgotten. 2 months after moving in, my parents showed up unannounced on a Friday evening. They brought measuring tape, fabric swatches, and furniture catalogs, explaining they wanted to help decorate properly, since I clearly had no idea how to arrange a livable space. My father spent the weekend inspecting every inch of the house, documenting what he called serious concerns about the property condition. During their stay, my mother casually mentioned that she had spoken with my boss about job openings at a Connecticut firm their friend managed. She had taken the liberty of sending them my resume. My father interjected that the compensation would allow me to afford a much nicer home in their neighborhood. Before leaving, my father mentioned they were considering converting my childhood bedroom into a home office. Then he paused and added they were keeping their options open, since young adults often go through phases of independence before realizing what truly matters. 3 days after their departure, I received an urgent call from my mortgage broker, Jason. He sounded confused and concerned. My parents had contacted the bank, claiming my mortgage application contained fraudulent information. They had submitted altered documents, suggesting I had misrepresented my income and employment status. I was stunned into silence. Jason explained that as co-signers, they were attempting to use their position to have the mortgage canceled. He had called me immediately because something about the situation felt wrong to him. The documents they provided had clearly been manipulated. My friend James worked as a real estate attorney. Over drinks that night, he explained the legal implications of what my parents were attempting. If successful, they could effectively force me to sell the house or move back to Connecticut. Their status as co-signers gave them leverage they should never have had. With James's help, I gained access to the full documentation my parents had submitted. Among the paperwork was an accidentally included email thread between them discussing their strategy. The emails revealed a calculated plan to use the mortgage situation to force me back under their control. My father had written that I would have no choice but to accept their help once the bank foreclosed. My mother's reply was equally disturbing, suggesting they could offer the solution of moving into their guest house under the guise of helping me rebuild my credit. They discussed how this financial crisis would make me more amenable to the job at their friend's company, bringing me back into their sphere of influence permanently. Reading those words from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally triggered severe anxiety attacks. For days I struggled to sleep constantly, checking that my doors were locked. Every phone notification made me jump. The sense of violation was profound. Amanda tried to be supportive, but the situation strained our relationship. I became suspicious of everyone questioning motives behind the simplest actions. When she suggested we take a weekend trip to clear my head, my first thought was that she was working with my parents to get me out of the house. The rational part of my brain knew this was absurd, but paranoia had taken root. My work performance suffered, as I spent hours on calls with the bank and various lawyers. My team lead noticed my distraction and declining productivity. When he asked what was happening, I could not even find words to explain the situation without sounding delusional. Nights became an ordeal. I would dream of returning home to find my locks changed, and my parents standing in the doorway explaining they had done what was necessary for my own good. I would wake up, gasping for air, checking property records online to confirm the house was still legally mine. 6 weeks into this nightmare, my parents escalated further. They arrived on a Saturday morning in a rented moving truck, explaining they were there to help me pack. When I refused to let them in, my father revealed they had spoken with a real estate agent about listing my house, claiming their status as co-signers gave them this right. Later that day, I overheard my father on the phone in my driveway, discussing what he called an intervention plan with family friends. He explained I was making poor financial decisions and needed firm guidance before I destroyed my future. The conversation included details about using their connections to create difficulties at my workplace that would make a move back east the only logical solution. That evening, Amanda received a call from my mother. Playing the role of the concerned parent, she expressed worry about my mental health and suggested Amanda encourage me to spend time in Connecticut to recover. She implied my increasing paranoia was threatening our relationship and positioned herself as an ally in Amanda's best interests. The final straw came when I discovered through a work colleague that my father had contacted our HR department. He had expressed concerns about my psychological fitness for my position, suggesting I needed time away to address personal issues. This direct attempt to undermine my career confirmed my worst fears about how far they would go. Through an old high school contact who now worked in real estate, I learned my parents had actually listed my condo for sale, without my permission, using their status as co-signers to initiate the process. The listing included professional photographs taken during their weekend visit, described as a desirable property perfect for a young professional or excellent investment opportunity. I knew I needed to take decisive action before their interference destroyed everything I had built. With James's recommendation, I consulted Susan Garcia, an attorney specializing in real estate law and family disputes. She helped me understand my options and develop a strategy to protect my home and independence. We began by documenting every instance of interference. I collected emails, recorded phone calls where legally permitted, and compiled a timeline of their actions. Susan explained that while their co-signer status complicated matters, their deliberate attempts to sabotage my mortgage through fraudulent claims created legal liability on their part. Simultaneously, I started sessions with Dr. Juan Winters, a therapist specializing in family trauma. He helped me recognize the manipulation tactics my parents had used throughout my life and develop language to establish firm boundaries. The concept of saying no to my parents without justification or apology was revolutionary. Financially, I created a complete firewall, new accounts at different banks, changed passwords and security questions on every platform, credit freezes to prevent unauthorized inquiries. I even purchased identity theft protection to monitor for any attempts to use my personal information. Most importantly, I strengthened my support network. I was honest with friends about what was happening. My colleagues, once informed about the situation, became protective allies. Amanda stood by me despite the strain, reminding me daily that I deserved autonomy. These connections gave me the courage to do what came next. After 3 weeks of preparation, I invited my parents to dinner at a restaurant near my home. I selected a public location for safety, but reserved a private room for confidentiality. With Susan's guidance, I brought a small recording device legal in California, with one-party consent. I arrived early to activate it and calm my nerves. When they entered, their confident smiles suggested they believed their plan was working. My father immediately launched into a story about running into an old family friend whose son was looking for roommates in Hartford. My mother added that the timing seemed perfect with my house conveniently on the market. I let them speak uninterrupted, documenting their assumptions. Then I calmly placed a folder on the table, containing printed copies of their fraudulent submissions to the bank, their emails discussing their strategy, and the unauthorized property listing. Their expressions shifted from confidence to shock as I methodically outlined each action they had taken to undermine my independence. My father recovered quickly, his lawyer instincts kicking in. He denied wrongdoing, framing everything as parental concern for my well-being. When that failed to gain traction, he switched to justification. They knew what was best, based on years of life experience. I was making impulsive decisions that would limit my future options. Everything they did was out of love. My mother tried a different approach, tears forming as she described sleepless nights, worrying about my welfare so far from family. She painted a picture of my childhood, filled with only love and guidance, conveniently omitting the control and manipulation. She suggested my perspective was distorted by Amanda and my California friends who did not truly understand our family dynamics. When these tactics failed to move me, my father turned threatening. His voice lowered as he reminded me of his extensive professional connections. How difficult would my career be? If certain people heard concerns about my decision-making abilities, how would Amanda feel about a partner whose financial stability was suddenly questioned? Was I prepared to lose their support completely? Over stubborn pride. Throughout their escalating attempts to regain control, I maintained the calm resolve Dr. Winters and I had practiced. When they finally paused, expecting my capitulation, I delivered the speech I had rehearsed countless times. I explained that love without respect is not truly love. Parents who genuinely want what is best for their child celebrate their independence rather than sabotaging it. The actions they had taken demonstrated not concern, but a desperate need for control that had nothing to do with my well-being. I outlined the boundaries that would now define our relationship. They would remove themselves as co-signers immediately. The fraudulent claims would be formally retracted. The property listing would be canceled. Any communication with my employer Amanda or my friends would cease completely. Future contact would be on my terms when and if I felt ready. My father's face hardened as he processed that his usual tactics had failed. In his ultimate attempt to regain the upper hand, he presented an ultimatum. I could either show the family loyalty I had been raised to value, or I could choose this misguided path of independence. I could not have both. My mother clutched his arm, tears streaking her makeup as she begged me to reconsider what I was throwing away, all the sacrifices they had made, all the opportunities they had provided, the family bond that should transcend any disagreement. Her words were carefully crafted to activate the lifetime of guilt they had installed. In that moment, with their manipulative playbook fully exposed, the decision became crystal clear. I told them I chose independence. My home career, relationships, and future would be determined by my choices alone. If they could not respect that fundamental right then, they were choosing to remove themselves from my life. They left the restaurant without finishing dinner. My father did not look back. My mother paused at the door, her expression a practiced blend of hurt and disappointment. I remained seated, maintaining my composure until they were truly gone, then allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just occurred. The following days brought the silent treatment I expected, followed by flying monkeys in the form of family friends and distant relatives, calling to express concern about our estrangement. Each conversation followed the same script, suggesting I did not appreciate all my parents had done for me. With Susan's help, I navigated the complex process of removing my parents from the mortgage. The evidence of their fraudulent claims actually accelerated the process, as the bank was eager to avoid any potential legal complications. Within 3 weeks, the house was solely in my name, protected by legal safeguards against further interference. I considered pursuing a restraining order, but ultimately decided against escalating the legal battle. Instead, I focused on practical security measures. New locks and security system for the house, cameras covering all entrances, password protection on my mailbox, instructions to neighbors to contact me immediately if my parents were spotted in the area. The road to emotional recovery proved more challenging than the legal resolution. Dr. Winters helped me understand that the anxiety and hypervigilance I experienced were normal responses to violated trust. Each therapy session helped untangle the complex emotions of grieving the parents I wished I had, while protecting myself from the parents I actually had. An unexpected source of healing came from reconnecting with my cousin Zachary, who had experienced similar controlling behavior from my aunt, my father's sister. We had been close as children before his family moved to Oregon. Finding someone who truly understood the family dynamics without explanation was invaluable. Our weekly video calls became a safe space to process our parallel journeys toward independence. Through Zachary, I discovered an online support group for adult children of controlling parents. Hearing stories from others facing similar struggles normalized my experience. Many members were further along in their healing journey, offering perspective on maintaining boundaries while processing the complex grief of family estrangement. Amanda suggested incorporating meditation and physical self-care into my routine. Morning runs through my neighborhood helped reclaim my sense of belonging in my community. Weekend hikes in nearby parks reconnected me with the freedom I had fought so hard to preserve. Slowly, my home began to feel like a sanctuary rather than a battleground. 3 months after the restaurant confrontation, a letter arrived from my parents. It contained no explicit apology, but acknowledged that their actions had caused harm, regardless of their intentions. They expressed willingness to respect the boundaries I had established if it meant maintaining some relationship. The careful wording suggested my father's involvement in drafting it, but my mother's signature came first. After discussing the letter with Dr. Winters and Amanda, I decided to respond with clear conditions for limited contact. Any relationship moving forward would be on my terms with explicit consequences for boundary violations. I suggested meeting in a neutral location with Amanda present, as both support and witness. That first meeting at a coffee shop halfway between our homes was awkward and tense. My father struggled visibly with not being in control of the conversation. My mother kept reaching across the table as if to touch my hand, pulling back when she remembered the boundaries we had discussed. We stuck to safe topics, weather and sports, avoiding the deeper issues that would require more trust than currently existed. As they were leaving, my father paused and said something that suggested a small but significant shift. He mentioned that while he still believed their intentions had been good, he respected the strength and determination I had shown in standing up for myself. Coming from him, this grudging acknowledgement felt momentous. Over the next 6 months, our limited interactions gradually became less strained. My mother learned to ask before offering advice. My father occasionally caught himself mid-directive and rephrased as a suggestion. They were far from perfect, often slipping into old patterns, but the immediate correction that followed showed effort I had not expected. The experience transformed my relationship with Amanda. Having witnessed both the worst of my family dynamics and my determination to break free from them, she understood me on a level few others could. Our conversations about family boundaries and future expectations became deeper and more authentic. When I mentioned possible marriage someday, we had already built the foundation of mutual respect that my parents had never modeled. At work, standing firm against my father's interference earned unexpected respect from my team and management. The promotion I received 6 months later came with feedback about demonstrating grace under pressure and maintaining professionalism through personal challenges. My confidence in professional settings grew as I recognized my value beyond family expectations. Perhaps the most profound change was in my relationship with myself. I became more attuned to manipulation in all forms, recognizing red flags in social interactions, workplace dynamics, and media consumption. Setting boundaries became second nature, not just with my parents but with everyone. The people worth keeping in my life respected those boundaries without question. A year after the confrontation, my house truly became a home. I painted rooms, colors my mother would hate. I arranged furniture for comfort rather than appearance. Amanda moved in bringing her vibrant artwork and easy laughter. Each personal touch represented another brick in the foundation of the life I had chosen. My relationship with my parents remains complicated. We speak monthly, with visits limited to major holidays. The conversations still require vigilance on my part, watching for subtle attempts to direct my life choices. But each time I enforce a boundary, and they respect it, a tiny piece of trust is restored. Last month I proposed to Amanda during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. When I called to share the news, my mother immediately began planning their involvement in the wedding. My father asked pointed questions about prenuptial agreements and combined finances. I calmly explained that we would plan our own celebration and make our own financial decisions. After a brief pause, they offered congratulations without further comment. Looking back on this journey, I understand now that true independence is not just physical distance or financial separation. It is the knowledge that you can love someone without being controlled by them. It is recognizing that family relationships should enrich your life, not restrict it. It is building connections based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or manipulation. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who crossed lines? Drop a comment below, sharing how you handled it and what you learned from the experience. Your story might help someone else currently navigating similar challenges. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that standing firm for your independence is both possible and worth it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that creating a life on your own terms is not selfish. It is necessary for becoming the person you are meant to be.